looking to make sure we don't run into anything. And then we take Spartan up and then point it in the correct attitude before we released it. Now the background there in the picture, Steve was taking the movies and he had to stand back a ways. He couldn't get right up to the window, of course, because J.O. and I were using the windows. And that's just smudges and desiccant in the background that are causing the spots there on the black part of the picture. But the arm worked as advertised. It's really a very versatile piece of machinery. And here you can see we released the Spartan and very gently pulling the arm back so that we didn't induce any tip-off rates into the Spartan.
The moment of release, Shannon's work was done and mine just started. We trained for a variety of tip-off rates, but fortunately the Spartan was rock solid. And shortly after we released it, the Spartan went through a programmed rotation maneuver. First rotated one direction about 45 degrees and stopped, and then rotated back. And it had to go through these motions before we were certain that the Spartan was really going to work. And once it did, then we were given a go to separate from the Spartan. And we did. Had it not gone through these rotations, then Shannon would re-grappled it with the arm and we would have put it back in the payload bay. And we separated at approximately 1 foot per second out to about 800-900 feet, and then we did a second separation maneuver in a retrograde fashion to separate out to about 100 miles from the Spartan over a 2-day period, and then to return and get it on the rendezvous. And there you can see the Spartan was approximately 400 feet below us there as we were passing over Ecuador.
That's certainly the most beautiful time during the flight when you look at the window, the Earth and space.
I was amazed how far away you could see the Spartan. We tracked it with our eyes quite a ways out, and then on the rendezvous 2 days later when we were coming up on it, we first got a visual observation of the Spartan about 36 miles away.
Well, you have to live on the spacecraft too, and it seems like I'm either cooking or eating. J.O. spent a lot of time back there in the corner. He was the cleanest crew member on board, far and away. You know, I'd be finished by now if I were washing my face. Shannon would be finished by now if it were her. We had to cut this. You're only seeing about 10%.
So when I did my famous 1,500 miles all in one shot, you get tired running 1,500 miles. Took about 5 minutes.
You see, all the equipment did not work very well. That was a major failure in the French experiments.
People often ask how you sleep and where you sleep, so we decided to document this. And you'll see that Dan and J.O. chose to sleep on the flight deck in their seats with the black sleep goggles on. And the position of the arms is simply where they go when all the muscles relax. Also up on the flight deck was John. You can see from this picture he was pretty uptight during the whole mission. He just slept kind of free-floating behind the back seats on the flight deck. There were 4 others of us downstairs, and you'll see a camera pass through the mid-deck.
Never complain about hotel accommodations after this one.
Sultan liked it best up on the lockers, and Patrick moved around a little bit, but some nights he was on the wall with me, just above me. And if you count heads, that leaves that's up to 6 now, and you might wonder where the 7th person is. We never really saw the 7th person, but you can just see a part of the sleeping bag hanging out from inside the airlock there, and that's where I had to tap Shannon and wake her up each morning.
That the other group of friends experiment, the echograph, and that was the first time that such sophisticated equipment could be used such early after the launch. And really it worked perfectly, and less than 3 hours after the launch I could work and take the first data.
Still haven't figured out what I'm doing there, but it's one of my experiments, the phase separation experiment. And I have to report also, like Patrick did, all the data we came back with came out really great. They did make a photographer out of me, and I'm trying to forget everything I learned.
we participated in an experiment, a tracking experiment of the orbiter called the HPTE, or High Precision Tracking Experiment. And on the second attempt, as we pointed the side hatch window with a small reflector mounted in it at the island of Maui, Hawaii, we spotted a very low-powered laser which was blinking on and off. This is a view from one of the payload bay cameras, and the iris of the camera was responding to the different intensities of light. So to the naked eye, it didn't look quite as dramatic as it does in these photos, but it did demonstrate a capability of not only the ground to track the orbiter, but the orbiter to precisely point any portion of it at a point on the ground also.
Well, after a day and a half of letting Spartan fly on its own and get its data, it was time to turn around and come back. And here we're already closing in on it on the V-bar, which we're at about 200 feet, and he's zooming in a little bit here. But the whole rendezvous went very smoothly. We had a little bit of a eye-opener at one of our burns where we had 2 jets fail, but we had practiced those in simulations so often that we went right through that with no problem. We closed in on it. Here you can see the sun setting in the background. We still don't have the explanation as to why, but Spartan did not end up in the exact attitude we expected it, so we had to do a little real-time planning up there into how we anticipated grabbing a hold of it. And essentially what we did was fly it a little bit forward in the payload bay and a little bit lower, and then John could, by moving the arm, could reach around behind it.
And here you see the view from the end of the robot arm, the TV camera sitting out on the end effector, as we call it, and the grapple target right there in front of you. Dan provided, as you can tell here, a very stable platform from which to operate the robot arm, and it's a very capable system. And this, I think, indicates that things don't have to be perfect in order to use this mechanism. And we were obviously overjoyed when we finally picked it up.
John let out a war whoop that about scared us all to death when he grabbed it.
And here you see it sitting on the arm. We kept it out there for a little bit until the sun came up so we could get some photographs of Spartan and document its condition prior to putting it into the bay. And at that time it was time to sneak it down into the latches, and the arm did its job again here very well. It's quite a high precision device, and one which we are going to continue to use very successfully with the shuttle program. I think that the really unique things about the shuttle program are the capabilities not only to put things into space, but also to bring them back to Earth. The arm is an integral part of that, as well as the capability to repair satellites in space. You can see the capability to maneuver very accurately and precisely with the arm is important to us.
Well, unfortunately, like just about everything in life, all good things have to come to an end sometime. And after we deployed the satellites and got Spartan out and back, it was time to get ready to come back home. Here you see us on deorbit morning. Actually, we were very organized and everything went really smooth. It might not look quite that way, but everything had a place and we had everything in the proper place. We have to put the seats back in, and then we had to put all the dirty clothes, those were in those mesh bags, and stow them away so they wouldn't hit anybody on as we came back in. And the other brown bags floating up there were the helmet bags, and we're putting them by the seats so that everybody would have their own helmets to put back on.
Re-entry is not quite as spectacular as launch, but when you are coming through the air at around Mach 20 to 22 and you start getting the rosy glow, it's really spectacular. John was also taking some pictures looking out the back, and maybe he can describe to you what he's seeing.
This is looking out the overhead window, and the tail of the vehicle is not in sight. What you're seeing here is simply the interaction of shock waves around the vehicle converging up over the top of the spacecraft and making that very intense picture. And then back to the glow on the windows. It's very intense heat outside the glass.
Coming across California, we're heading east into a rising sun, so once again we couldn't see anything due to the haze on the windows, but once we got partway around the hack, as you see here, I could make out the runway. We'd decided to go to runway 23 as a result of the predicted winds, and as we rolled out on final, the winds were a crosswind, so you can try and predict wind, but you aren't always going to hit it correctly. At that point, it was too late to change runways, and we continued on to the lake bed runway 23. The vehicle, as has been said before by previous commanders who have flown it, handles very well. And even in a crosswind, you probably have to work a little more at it, but it still is a very precise flying machine. And all the training we get in the shuttle training aircraft certainly helps, because you can see the gear come down here when you do your first landing. It's got to be a good one for real the first time. It's good to have all that training behind you, and you feel confident that everything is going to work out just fine, as it did in this case. We touched down and pretty lightly bounced just a little bit, got the nose down, and we'd, by design, tried to do almost a max braking. They wanted 10 to 12 foot per second braking rate as we touched down. The lake bed was a little bit soft, and you can see when we start getting on the binders, there's a pretty good cloud of dust being kicked up behind it. We, I guess, have the record now for the shortest stop from wheels down to stop was 7,400 feet, and the braking profile was right on what they expected. It varied between 10 and 12 foot per second, almost all the way to touchdown. I mean, all the way to stop. Once we got stopped, we have to go through a few post-flight checklist items and shut down the APUs and the like, reconfigure the GPCs, and then it's time to get out and take a shower. Here we're coming down the steps. I almost pulled a Gerald Ford. We meet our boss, George Abbey, and everybody came through the flight in really great shape. As you can see, everybody's down, bouncing around, and sad the flight's over, but also happy to be back, and we were very pleased with the whole mission.